Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope y'all doing so good today. We are here to talk about my goals and stats at the midway point through the year in 2025. I normally do a quarterly stats and goals check-in, but I decided I just wasn't feeling that this year. I kind of went through them myself and said, I'm doing pretty good. Not feeling like I need to make a video on it, but I'm excited to do it at the halfway point because I just feel like there's a lot more data for us to look at. So hopefully it will be more interesting for me and more interesting for you. I do keep a lot of my goals and my stats in an analog notebook. This is just a better form for me. I don't tend to do very well when I track stuff virtually, and it's very bare bones. I'm just like writing stuff in here. It's not pretty or anything like that. But if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notebook. So we're gonna start with the goals and then we're gonna go to the stats afterwards. I'll put timestamps down below. So if you just wanna do one or the other, you know how much to watch or where to start watching. And we'll go ahead and get into the goals. The first one that I have is tracking books in and out of my TBR. I have had this one ever since I've been on BookTube, and this is always the goal that I'm trying to work towards, probably the hardest. I finally reached it last year of trying multiple years not being able to make it, and finally last year I had a deficit on my TBR. I'm trying to make them equal. I don't want to be buying more books than I can actually read. I'm happy to have a really big TBR. I enjoy having a big TBR, but it doesn't make sense for me to be buying more books than I can actually read because they're just gonna sit there. A little caveat on how I track these. I always mention this, my physical books in are only books that I brought into my TBR of my own volition. So this is mainly purchasing books, picking up a book from a little free library, or accepting a free book from a bookstore. Those are the three main things that I would be counting books in for. I don't count gifts because I just want them to be a gift. I don't want to have to be worried about how they're going to impact my TBR. And that sort of balances out with how I keep my physical books out, which is only books that I have read in their entirety that came from my physical TBR. So this doesn't count any library books that I read entirely, and this doesn't count any books that I have started off of my TBR, decided to DNF, and unhauled. And I think that well compensates for not counting gifts for myself, and that's the justification I use. So that's how I track it. As of the midway point, I had 33 books that came into my TBR and 27 books that came off of my TBR. Now, you can tell me how you feel like I'm doing with this. On the one hand, part of me wants to say, okay, I'm not completing the goal. I'm not completing the goal. I want to take that seriously and really make a conscious effort to catch back up on reading things off of my TBR. I've been reading a lot of library books for a while, and that's what has affected this because my purchasing is actually not that bad, at least for me and like what I'm trying to accomplish. The other part of me wants to say, you're 6 books behind, and that's not that many. That's not that bad. And that is true, but it is actually really easy to get behind very quickly. And I don't want to fall down that rabbit hole. I think that was happening the first couple of years where I was like, I'm not that far off. And then I would have another month where I bought more books than I read off of my TBR and got even further behind. So I want to take the 6 seriously that I need to catch up on, and I'm going to make a really conscious effort to read predominantly off of my TBR, slow down some of the library books, and I'm not going to be purchasing a ton of books in the near future. There are some that are going to be trickling in, but not very many, mostly some pre-orders here and there or like a subscription that I'm a part of, that type of thing. So this one, we're doing okay, but ultimately I'm not accomplishing it, so I need to try and catch up. So that is my books in and out. Next goal is reading 3 Picante Beef Babies, or books over 500 pages. I call them Picante Beef Babies. It is a Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference. If you know, you know. And this goal, I'm actually doing really well. I have already completed 2 books, and I completed them early on. I think in January and February, I completed a book each. One of them is Onyx Storm, and then the second one I actually can't talk about. I didn't realize this until I was thinking about filming this video. I haven't mentioned this at all on the channel, but I am working on a secret project. I'm working on a secret video that I have some books that I'm reading throughout the year for that I can't talk about. So sorry for that teaser, but I have read another book already that's over 500 pages I haven't talked about on the channel yet, and I can't tell you what it is so far, so I can keep the surprise. But I have completed 2, and I'm actually currently reading a 3rd book that is well over 500 pages and about to start a 4th book that is over 500 pages. So I would say I'm crushing this goal. I'm crushing this goal. I'm going to surpass this goal by the end of the year, at least by 1. I might pick up more though, who knows? I am finally feeling like I am getting out of this like intimidation factor around bigger books and might have finally broken my habit of avoiding them. You'll see that in some of my stats later as well, of why I'm thinking there might be some evidence that I finally grown to be a big book reader. So this goal, crushing it, doing great. Next goal is to read 1 translated book a month. I always have this goal as well, but this one tends to be a much easier one for me to complete every year, and I have completed this so far. I will put a link to the Storygraph challenge that I use for this goal. I think it's someone else's. One year I had to create it myself. Other years someone does it and I just join it. I can't quite remember what it is this year, but I'll link down the challenge down below so you can look through all of the books that I'm counting each month for this, although there are many months where I've read more than 1 translated book. But this goal, ticking off, doing good. And I always keep this because I want to just consistently be picking up translated books. I want that to be a habit, not necessarily something that I like read a big chunk all at once and then don't ever pick them up again throughout the year. I want to consistently be picking them up. So that's why I have it here. And then the last goal was just to do more vlogging. And this I have also accomplished. I have made some moderate changes to my channel just in terms of the types of videos that I'm filming. I've gotten rid of a lot of the more like routine videos that I film just because they were feeling less exciting to me, and I have done more vlogging. Specifically, I wanted to get into challenge videos as well, and I have done that too. So I've started my Now or Never series, which is my version of a Read It or Haul It type of challenge. I already have 3 episodes out for that, and I'm currently working on the 4th one. And those have been really fun for me to film. I love watching other people do challenge videos. So this has been really nice for me to do it in a way that works with my reading capacity and my reading style. And then I've been able to do some other vlogging videos as well, like my seeing how much I read in a week vlog was very fun to do and pretty different for my channel because there was a lot of B-roll in that vlog. So I've been having a great time, and this is definitely a success so far already. And I'm planning on doing more. So that's great. So basically all the goals I'm doing really well on, except for the tracking books in and out, I'm behind and need to catch up. So those are the reading goals for the year. Now let's get into the stats. I do use Storygraph like a lot of us do out here, and I have some stats from that, but I'm not going to share all of those, only the ones that I find interesting. I am going to share some of the specific stats that I track in my journal though. So I track the percentage of books that I'm picking up that are translated. So at the midway point for the year, I had read 45 books in total, and the percentage of translated books from that was 40%. So 40% of those books were translated. That's a good place for me to be in. I like to be at least at 30% with my translated reading. So about 1 in every 3rd book picking up being translated. So 40% I feel really good about and happy with that number. For small independent presses, at the midway point in the year, I had read 48% from smaller independent presses. Also a really good place for me to be. I try to be around the 50% mark with small to independent presses. So I'm just about there, so feeling good about that as well. So those numbers, they're important to me for my reading. I'm trying to decolonize my reading by reading translated literature. And I'm also trying to support the type of literature and the ethos that comes from small independent presses. I think they're such a valuable part of the bookish ecosystem. So I want to prioritize those as well. So those are why I track those individually on my own. So happy with all of that. At the end of the year, I always put out some graphics on every small press that I read from, so you can see and how many I read from them, and then every country and language I read from. That's always fun for me to kind of collate and give to you. So you'll see that at the end of the year but doing pretty well there. Some other interesting stats that I've been tracking is one, my e-reading has been up this year, and this is for a fairly specific reason. I talked about this a while ago. I initially bought the e-reader to help with my insomnia. It's part of my getting my brain ready for bed routine. And I've been staying pretty consistent and probably more consistent now than ever around that. But the other real reason that I have been reading on my e-reader more is this year I have discovered that my vision is starting to fail a little bit, which I know that sounds sad. There's nothing major going on, but my vision in my left eye is no longer the same as the vision in my right eye, which is still 20/20. So I've actually just been struggling a little bit with very tiny text with my vision being different in my two eyes. And it's much easier for me on the e-reader to enlarge the text, and I feel the difference less for my vision. I am just finally about to get in with my eye doctor so I can hopefully get some corrective lenses for when I read. But yeah, it's just a life thing that happens. My body is changing, and I'm so happy that e-readers exist so they can accommodate things like that. And I know there are other people who are very reliant on accommodations like that. So my ebook reading, definitely up. I have read at the midway point of the year, I've read 11 books on my e-reader, which might not sound like a lot to some people, but for me before it was like 2 to 3 books a year on my e-reader. So that's way up. I also track how many books I'm getting from the library and reading. And at the midway point, I had read 18 books from the library. These are only the ones that I completed from the library, not DNF'd and gave back. So completed 18 books that I checked out from the library solely, so I didn't own them in any type of way. Okay, now we're gonna get into some of the StoryGraph stats. So I'll put graphics up as I'm talking about them. The ones that are really interesting to me so far this year, one are the page number. So this I was talking about earlier. I think I finally cracked the code on having a better mix of bigger books and shorter books that I feel good about. I mean, there's no right or wrong mix, but I was definitely noticing I was avoiding bigger books because of that book math that we all do, where it's like, well, I could finish 2 other books in the time that it takes me to read that one book. That feels like a really big investment. I don't know if I'm gonna love it. So I was avoiding them, even though I know I love being in a long book experience. If it's a book that I'm enjoying, it is so nice to be steeped into a book. And I think a longer form does allow you to do more things, or maybe different things in a book than you would with a shorter option. So I'm very happy to have tilted the scales a little bit here. So here you can see I have 52% of my reading. It's still 300 or shorter, but almost 50%, so 48% is 300 or longer. And that is very different for me. That being around 50% is huge. It used to be around 25%. So I've almost doubled the amount of reading I've done in the 300 plus section. And I'm so happy for that. I'm so happy that it's becoming easier to pick up these 500 plus pages and not feeling like I need to really scrap at the end of the year to complete those goals. It's finally feeling more baked into my reading, which is what I set the goals for in the first place. I noticed a gap that I have in my reading or something I want to change about my reading. So I set a goal to try and adjust the habit a bit. And I feel like it's totally worked with this. And I'm so happy that I feel no trepidation picking up a bigger book nowadays. I also always like to mention my most read authors. So there are 3 authors I have read 2 books from this year, and that is Chelsea Beaker, Elodie Harper, and Robert Jackson Bennett. Chelsea Beaker, I read Mad Woman and Heartbroke. Thoroughly enjoyed them both. She is definitely an author that has solidified herself as a for me author, and I want to try and read Godshot, her only other standalone that she has, so I can be a Chelsea Beaker completionist. So hopefully you'll be seeing a 3rd book by the end of the year for her. Next up we have Elodie Harper. I finally finished the Wolf Den trilogy, so I read The House with the Golden Door and The Temple of Fortuna. Loved my experience reading those, and she does have another release that has come out since the Wolf Den. I think is it called Boudica? It's about Boudica. I don't know if the title is like Daughters of Boudica or something like that. So I'm interested in that. I'm probably not going to pick it up this year, but because I love the Wolfdern trilogy so much, and it sort of convinced me maybe I might be more of a historical fiction reader than I thought, I might try her other. She has some older stuff that seems somewhat less interesting to me. I think some of it might even be YA. Happy to have read 2 books by her this year. And then I also read both of the books that are currently out in the Leviathan trilogy, something with the Leviathans, The Tainted Cup and A Drop of Corruption. The reason why this is always interesting for me is I like having a handful of authors every year that I've read multiple books from in a short period of time, right? In a year's span time, because it allows you to do some interesting reflection on that author's style, maybe themes that you're seeing across books, and gives you more of a lens to view each work through. It kind of makes each book kind of greater than itself because you have some additional context going into that book. So I really enjoy doing that. So hoping to add a couple more authors to this list, mainly Ben Okri. I know I talked about that in my mid-year freakout tag. I want to read another book from Ben Okri this year because I read him for the first time and absolutely adored that book. Here are the authors that I've read a couple times this year. Please let me know if you have read any authors multiple times this year. I love hearing about that from people, and maybe tell me why you've read multiple books by that author. And those are probably all the stats I'm gonna talk about for now. I really appreciate you all being here and going over my goals and stats with me, holding me accountable, which is very important. I really want to know how your goals are doing so far this year. I love getting to see what people are tracking or what people are wanting to work and stretch themselves towards, because each reader is a little bit different, right? We want different things out of our reading. And if you have any fun stats to throw in there, throw them in as well, and we'll talk about it in the comments below. So I will leave it there, and we will see you all in the next one. Bye.